Welcome to The Business of Family, the podcast where we explore the stories, challenges, and opportunities of family businesses. I'm your host, Tammy Buss, and I'm a family business survivor and also a family business advisor. In this show, we will be talking with family business leaders and experts to bring you insights and inspiration so you too can survive your family business journey. Whether you're a founder, a successor, a professional, or just curious about family businesses, this podcast is for you. So today our guest is Dottie Chalmers Cutter. She's the fourth generation owner and chief operating officer of Chalmers Group, and she started there in 2005. I know, hard to believe you don't look like you'd be old enough to work there in 2005.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
So Dottie, along with her cousin Jim, acquired the agency from their fathers, and Dottie now manages the company's operations. And her psychology degree from Bowdoin College has translated into a passion for talent development, mentorship, and enhancing motivation and engagement in the workplace. She shifted the agency's focus from traditional performance management to a development-oriented approach, advocating for a managerial style that emphasizes coaching over supervising. I love that. Dottie is a certified leadership coach and leads the Emerging Leaders programs at Chalmers. Welcome.
Welcome. Thank you for having me.
Wow, you've got I could keep reading and reading. This is amazing.
It reminded me, I'm like, maybe I need to make this a bit more concise. But no, I appreciate the opportunity to be on your podcast.
Yeah, so I talked to Dottie a while back, and I just had to have her on our show because you're a fourth generation, which, as you know, is about 3% of family businesses that make it to fourth gen. So I just had to start with telling me a little bit about what does that mean to you to be a fourth generation?
It's really quite an honor. I'm very excited. I'm grateful. I'm grateful that, I have this incredible opportunity. My dad and my uncle were the third generation owners, and I think out of my dad's 3 children, he knew that I was the one that he kind of could see entering the insurance industry. So he would whisper insurance in my ear quite often as a child, and I think subliminally it really did work. I kind of filed that away, and went to Bowdoin College for psychology, and that translates really well to what I do now because I work with people, in leadership. But that
should be like a basic in school with math, spelling, reading, and psychology.
Yeah, it's really foundational, and it helps in so many ways, especially if you're in any kind of service-driven industry. But yeah, it's a legacy to be involved. We're a 167-year-old company.
Unbelievable.
And, we're proud of that fact. And our goal really is to pass the torch to the 5th generation. That is the goal. We want to remain family owned and operated. So
yeah. So tell me a little bit about how you entered the business and then ended up buying it with your cousin.
Yeah, so like I said, my dad whispered insurance at a young age, but I actually thought I was going to be a pediatrician. So I wanted to enter the medical field, went to Bowdoin, thinking I was going to be pre-med, took intro to biology, and barely passed that class, and realized that maybe I need to do a little bit of a pivot, and then majored in psychology. After Bowdoin, I went to New Zealand for a year and just kind of lived abroad and got that whole experience, and came back broke. My dad was very willing to offer me a job, and it was really important, for him, with me being, DOB, daughter of boss, to start really kind of at the bottom. And so I got my insurance degree or license because that was important, and my dad really wanted to make sure I had a solid foundation in insurance. And so I started out with a personal lines book of business. So I sold home and auto and boats and all the ancillary lines to clients, many of whom I've known because I grew up in the Bridgeton community. And so I did that for many years, and then grew from there because I really enjoyed the new business side of it. So helping first-time homeowners and helping kids who turn 16 get auto policies. And so I did that for many years. And then my dad called me and my cousin Jim part of the junior management team for about a decade, and he would bring us into manager meetings and have us. He'd always make sure to give me a speaking role. because he knew that was something that I probably needed a little bit of work in, and it's a little intimidating. And so he always found a way to highlight me in a meeting and make sure that I was prepared with some talking points, and that really helped with my confidence level. And they just started to give me more and more responsibility, and I think then he had me manage just a couple offices, and we have 8 locations today, and 6 of those are in Maine, 2 are in New Hampshire. And so, I don't know, I just really kind of took a hold to leadership and managing, and just kind of grew from there, and found kind of my niche, which I'm not like my dad. He was agency management and operations, and that's very much my wheelhouse. My cousin Jim is very much his father's son. He was the salesman, the consummate salesman. So Jim loves nothing else than to go and sell and bring in more business and accounts, and that's really playing to his strengths. And my strengths really are more with people, managing people and developing them, and really just leading the agency's operation, kind of strategic vision. So that's kind of where more of my role.
Right. So you have separated the roles between you and your cousin.
Yes.
And have you talked about transitioning? Like, have you started? I know your kids are still young, but how old's your brother
Our kids are young. So I have 3 kids, and the oldest daughter, she's 15. So she's only a sophomore in high school. And I have twins, boy and girl, that are 12, and they're in 6th grade. So 2 out of 3 say they are interested. My oldest daughter, the 15-year-old, and then the 12-year-old son. They say they're interested. Who knows? That could change, but I love it. And here, every day on the first day of school, they hold up this little blackboard about what do they want to be when they grow up. And every year, my 15-year-old has said, I want to be a Chalmers insurance agent like my mom. Every year. She's getting a little smarter now. So now it's, what do you want to be when you grow up? I want to be the boss.
Yeah.
Chalmers Insurance. So and then my son says, well, I'm going to be the COO. She's going to be the CEO. I'll be the COO. So that's kind of what they're claiming as of today. But that is the goal. So I'm here for it if it's something that they really want or interested in.
And how many siblings do you have?
I have 2, older brother and a younger sister. My older brother tried insurance for a few years. It wasn't for him, and he decided to pursue his dream of really being a counselor. So he went to school, got his master's for counseling, and he lives in Florida now. And my sister is only a year and a half younger, and she is involved in insurance, but not Chalmers Insurance. My dad also has another company that's called a TPA, a third-party claim administrator, and my sister runs that business. So separate business entity. At one point they were kind of part of the Chalmers umbrella, we like to say. But so she's involved in insurance, just different business than my business.
And so you and your cousin own Chalmers Insurance now. Does she own that?
She does. She does. She just acquired. They did that succession planning at the end of last year. My cousin and we did the succession planning end of 2017 is when, and Chalmers Insurance is the larger entity, and Jim and I had also each put in about 20 years. Well, at that time maybe it was more like 15 years when we did the succession. And we needed to. It was my uncle is still alive, but he's 87 and he has dementia, and so we needed to really need to address the succession planning thing. So we did, and that was a big relief, I think, at the time, to make sure that we had a plan. And Jim and I we had the sweat equity in, and officially purchased the agency from our dads.
Now, does Jim have siblings?
He does. And the older sister not involved, and a younger brother who is involved, but he works with my sister running the TPA company. So you have cousin on both sides of the house. So I actually think that works brilliantly. If I had to work with my sister, I love her, she's my best friend. But I think we are both a little bit headstrong, and I think we would have, sometimes I say, we're alpha female. I feel like it would have resulted in some unpleasant conversations. I think this is a much better deal to have me and my cousin on this side of the house, and then she with Jim's younger brother run the TPA company.
Right. Now, is your dad still involved?
No, he's not. He's there more of counsel, and he loves nothing more than to have, like, he's allowed to have an annual meeting with us every year. He's still sort of involved in the sense that we will disclose, financial information, and we'll talk about strategy with him at least once a year to give him a sense for how we're doing. He's more involved on my sister's side of the house, I think only because that transition happened just at the end of last year. So he's closer to that side and counseling my sister through some of her challenges.
So there's two of you.
Yeah.
So when you make decisions, how does that work?
We work really well. I'm really happy because my dad and my uncle were brothers, and they would say they never had a disagreement in their life. They always got along, and they always supported each other's decisions. And so far, with my cousin Jim, we are the same way. We have not had any major disagreements. There were a couple times I can think of where maybe he broached an idea or I did, and we just talk through it, and at the end of the day, we can come to terms and.
Do you have a board of directors or anything to help, or an advisory board that sort of helps you?
We don't. That's something that I know is popular. We have thought about that in the past, but we don't. So it's myself and my cousin, and we do have another non-family owner, partial owner, and he owns about 10% of the company, and he's our president. So at the time when we acquired Chalmers at the end of 2017, Jim and I were still, like, our kids were little and we were raising our families, and so Steve, who's the president of our company today, is not much older than us, that he can be truly a steward, and he knew his role was to kind of really help us kind of bridge the gap and make sure we were ready for our roles. And so he's involved in a great sounding board for us as well. We make decisions, really, the three of us together.
That's good. Well, because again, if you have three people, it's like two ganging up on one. And I think we were at an event last night, and one of the speakers was talking about how that can be a problem. Like, you feel like you're being ganged up on. But when you have two and you both, have opposite opinions, how does that actually work when you're trying to make decisions? So do you have things that are written down that talk about through your shareholders agreement or your policies and procedures? Do you have anything like that sort of would step in when something went sideways?
Yeah, and I'm embarrassed. I'm trying to recall. We've never had to enforce any of that. So I know
that's amazing, and I hope you never do.
I know.
I know it's like after the horse is out of the barn, it's kind of hard to fix it.
Well, it's actually last night one of my colleagues kind of whispered to me, I was like, "You guys, do you have bylaws?" Like, we've never had an issue. We've never had to enforce anything like that. We've always.
Now it's good because there's two of you, but when you think about fourth generation, you could have 30 or 40 cousins that are part of an ownership group, right?
Yeah.
So the fact that it's gone down one branch of the family tree, even to the fourth generation, is amazing, right? Because it can be quite large. But when you go to the next generation, how many does Jim have?
He has 2 kids.
So there's 5 potential, right?
Yes.
So then you start having conflict because, as you said, you love your sister, but if you had to work with her. So think about if it was you, your sister, Jim and his brother, the 4 of you as now partners, right? So it's one of the things that, again, you haven't had an issue, and that's the time to actually write these up. It's kind of like a prenup, right? You do when you're all in agreement, as opposed to fighting it out in court. And as a family business advisor, I can see how things can tear families apart. Something simple, right? So I would suggest that you start talking about that.
No, I appreciate that. It is something we've got to really kind of think about. And that's actually advice. What advice would I give, right, to somebody? And not, honestly, like, knowing who your team is, like you're having a great attorney and accountant and financial planner. My dad was always great to say, "Hey, Dottie, like, now that you own the company, pick your team. You don't need to pick my team." He had a great relationship with his attorney, and they're of the same vintage, and which I like to say, and he's like, "But I've had him my whole career, and you can change. You don't have to use that law firm. You can pick a different attorney." I appreciated that, because I think you do want somebody that you absolutely have to trust, that's going to help you, but I'll be with you on your journey as you're evolving.
One of the things that I highly recommend as a family business advisor is to have collaboration and to work with your whole team. And even if you've had a lawyer or an attorney for years and years and years, sometimes you need specialists. So you're not going to give up your regular attorney, but you're going to have one who specializes in, family business, shareholder agreements, or something like that, where there's a specialty. So it's really good that you collaborate and bring everybody to the table, because they are part of your advisory team. But every one of them has their own agenda. Like the accountant is all about the deferral of tax or the elimination of tax, and the lawyer is all about control, right? But as a family, and my role as a family business advisor is to get the family on the same page so that you can instruct them on what you're trying to do, and then they can come back with recommendations, right? Because you get sucked down. It's like when you walk out and you just bought a car and you really don't know what you bought because you've gone around in circles so often you don't know what you have. It's the same thing when you're trying to do planning, right? You want to have everybody at the table to understand what you're trying to achieve. But I want to back up just a little bit, because this company has a long tenure. So what are some of the values? Like, what has kept this company going so long?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think at our core we have an acronym, and it's called SHIP, SHIP. So and the values haven't changed. The S is exceptional service to our clients. H is honesty with everybody. I is involvement in our communities, and P is passionate professionalism. And so that's really our core value system.
I love that.
It was also a very easy way to remember those core values.
Yes.
And my dad, we always we call him the captain. You would think he was, actually had like a captain's license but he doesn't. It's just
does he have a captain's hat?
He has a captain's hat. He's got like probably 20 of them at this point. But he's really we say he's the captain of a pontoon boat on Highland Lake in Bridgeton, Maine. But he goes by the captain, and so we felt like ship kind of plays to that nautical piece. And we are in Maine, and there's plenty of water around with oceans and lakes in the area. But at our core, those values live true to us. A couple other ones I can think of would just be around having a positive attitude and a growth mindset, which are two pieces that we really look for when we're welcoming new, we call them family members, to join our firm, because that's really critical. And my dad is probably the most positive man that I know, and that outlook on life that he has through some medical issues he's faced. He's basically been able to extend his life by about 12 more years because he had double lung transplant 12 years ago. And so he just lives every day with that positive outlook, and he's made it, he's extended his life, like I said, by 12 years. So positive attitude is huge. It's contagious, and we look for that as well. And then really the community is huge for us, and because we have 4 generations involved, we really know our neighbors. We know our community. We're from a small town. All of our agencies are really in small towns, and it's important to give back. So that's something that, I learned at a very young age, because I don't know any different. My parents and my extended family were all giving back to the community, whether they were on a million different boards or volunteering at local road races. And I was too, as a little kid. Like my dad's like, we're going to give out water to the road race participants today. And I did that every year of my life, starting at like 6 or 7 years old. So I don't know what it's like not to give back to the community. So,
one of the things that I preach to the families I work with is having core values, or they have them. They're just not necessarily written down or memorized or shared. And those are the things that carry on. If you have strong core values that carry on, and you can see the businesses grow and last because of it, because you hire based on those. Everything you do is based on your core values. And I know that a lot of families are like, oh my God, we got to go through a core values exercise. Or, sometimes they go, well, I know we have them. They might be with the lawyer. I'm not quite sure. And it's like, okay, so you don't know what core values are. But I think that's so important that you knew them right off the top of your head, and that everybody knows them. And SHIP is an easy thing to remember.
It is, yep.
My first family company, ours were HRSP. So RRSPs is very popular in Canada. So it was easy to do. And I would start every meeting with, give me an H. And then we'd say, tell me how you did that this week or from the last time we met. Like, give me an example of core values. Because it's really important. And I think that's what makes and continues with family business to make them last.
They do.
For generations.
We figured out how to kind of make sure they were really embedded in our culture. And
I love that.
We do this whole rewards program, and we call it Bounty Bucks, and it's to play off the ship nautical, the vernacular that we have. And so Bounty Bucks is really coworkers can nominate other coworkers for displaying any one of our core values.
I love that.
So they would actually, we have a form, it's all online, they would fill it out and they would pick, is this S for service to our clients? Is it H for honesty? They pick the core value, they write why they're nominating that coworker. Then that coworker gets literally an emailed little certificate that says, congratulations, you've been nominated for a Bounty Buck, and it says who nominated you and why. And then it also gives, every time they've been nominated, they get a raffle into our grand prize, which we will be drawing next Wednesday at our annual business meeting. And that goes to, it's a gift certificate, a very generous gift certificate to a wonderful 5-star luxury resort in Maine on the coast. And so it's a big deal. Everybody gets really excited to do the grand prize. But again, it's just a way that we've been able to really embed the core values into our system. So.
Well, you know what? The thing with core values and embedding them is like what you said about it's contagious with your dad's positive outlook, that it does cascade. So if you are really, truly, living those core values, your employees there will, exude them, and they will attract other people.
Yes.
Your clients will exude. Like, you shouldn't have to write it on a piece of paper and put it on the wall to remind people. Right? Your clients, you don't have to tell your clients what your core values are. They should be able to tell you what they are if you interview them. One of the exercises I do is have clients ask their clients, maybe 10 or 15, if they could describe them in 3 or 4 words, what would it be? And employees and friends and family, and you do all that, and all of a sudden you see that they are there, right? Yeah. And so now you just have to make sure you're aware of them and start using them in your business, because it does breed, people want to stay there. They want to be part of that culture.
Absolutely.
Right? It's the foundation of a good culture is having those core values.
Absolutely.
So what does the future look like for you and Jim? Like, what have you looked at for the future? Because you're going into Gen 5.
Yeah, I know. I mean, our goal, so in insurance in particular, these are kind of sort of difficult times in that a lot of truly independent firms are getting bought up by other larger firms, and we're seeing that right in our backyard. So our goal is truly to remain independent. We do not have any desire to sell. We get asked all the time, but
anybody who's successful gets asked.
We get asked all the time, and we're like, no, we're not interested. We want to make it to the 5th generation, and it's really, we usually get really great responses to that, because they think that that's a great thing to do, to remain family owned and independent. So that is our goal, and then we want to grow. We want to continue to grow and expand, and
what does that look like, that growth and expansion?
So it could be, obviously, we'd love to add more accounts to Chalmers to help with revenue, but it also could mean going into a different market for us. So we're thinking about maybe adding locations in other states that could be of interest to us and growing. I'm nothing crazy, but maybe Vermont or another location in New Hampshire, closer to Portsmouth area, because those are great marketplaces to kind of enter. So that's something we've thought about. I also just really want to keep our culture and engagement where it is. That's something that is huge, and I'm very much a big proponent of motivation and engagement. And so we are a best place to work in insurance, which is a survey we apply. We apply every other year. We've won it 3 times. Every time we've applied, we've won. And
congratulations!
Thank you. So it's super important, because, as you probably know, those surveys come from your employees. They have to take a engagement survey, and there's probably 120 questions on it.
Wow.
And they break it down into 7 major sections, and it's everything from leadership and planning to relationship with supervisor to corporate culture and communications to pay and benefits. And so you get really, really great data from that. And our overall engagement is 96%. which
Wow,
means
that's amazing.
Which means something to me,
Yeah.
you know. And
right there, just from that alone, regardless of what they said, is good.
I know. So we are proud of that and want to keep those numbers, you know, there or higher. And so, so that's important. So that's something just integral to who we are. So anytime when I'm talking, yes, we want to grow, but I want to protect and preserve our culture.
Mm-hmm.
I want to add more people to Chalmers that fit the culture. You know, insurance, we're an aging industry, and, you know, so that's something that I also look at. You know, the average age of our workforce, probably even just 5 years ago, was 55, and now we're down to about 47. So we're trending downwards because we're hiring in younger. And then, you know, we've had some retirements as well. But that's something that keeps me up at night, because I've got to, at the end of the day, I need to have licensed agents that know insurance and that can maintain a book of business and grow. So that's hugely important. So I want to bring in more talent. It is tricky because, you know, pay and benefits do play a role in that, and our competitors, especially the larger firms, you know, can afford, you know, really crazy salaries and things of that nature, and sometimes it's hard to compete with that. And so we feel like we have a wonderful story to tell, and we have a really wonderful benefits package, and pay is certainly an important piece of that, but so isn't things like having a flexible work hybrid schedule, and we do offer that. And having, you know, we give 16 hours of volunteer time because we feel so that community involvement is so important that we'll give you 2 days to go to donate into the community however you would like to do that. That was something that I felt really was important to do, because, again, if community involvement is a core value, and I'm saying it is, then I'm like, okay, I got to really show everybody, like, I mean this. So here's 2 days to volunteer in the community.
Well, and I think that's important because it's not just about the pay, right? You spend a lot of your days with your coworkers. You spend a lot of days. You spend as much time at work as you do with your family, because you're sleeping part of that, but you're at work, so you want to make sure you like what you do and like the environment. And I don't have the stat at the top of my head, but I do think it's something like 78% of employees, the tenure is longer in a family business. I think it's 30 years or something like that, because they stay. It's because of the culture, because of the fit. Like, when you're in a good business, they'll stay.
Yeah.
Right? Because you're not lost in a number. You're not lost in a big organization. You're actually part of something, and you can see it. You can see the results right in front of you, right?
So one of my favorite questions on the Best Place to Work survey is, you're proud to work for the organization. And our score for that question is 99%.
Oh, that's amazing. Who's the one who didn't? You got to go find
I know.
I don't know
who that one person is, but
can you have? You know, you're gonna have to have the bucks for that one. Brad out the guy who didn't give that.
Who didn't give us a perfect score. But, you know, when you have 100 people and you score 99%, that's amazing. So I really,
somebody stole his lunch or her lunch out of the fridge, and that's why.
could be, but, you know, and there's a whole part of the engagement survey that's literally just around engagement, and so it's things like, you would recommend people to come work here. You would refer clients to come work here. You're prideful to work for the organization. At this organization, they know me as a person and not as a number. And they do. And that was, I think, 100%. Everybody knows that we know who they are, and we treat you like a human being. That, I mean, I take and make sure that I know, like, intimate things about my coworkers, because it's important.
Yeah.
It could be like making sure, even just like, I'm calling you by the right name that you want to be called, you know, and, you know, I spend time with every new hire and make sure that just to get to know them better. And, you know, that's important. And
I love it. So, no wonder the company's been around for
167 years. Yeah.
Amazing.
So those are the things that I think are just true to who we are. My dad and my uncle and my grandfather, they were all genuinely curious people and very humble people, but they would sit down and just pull up a chair and talk to our agents, and they remember that. They couldn't believe, oh my God, he sits, Mr. Chalmers takes the time to sit down and ask me about my family. And so those types of values have certainly been passed down, and I love doing that today.
Amazing.
One of my favorite things I get to do is just get to know your people.
Well, believe it or not, we're out of time.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So if you've listened to my podcast, you know I like to end with 3 pieces of advice. So this is your opportunity to give me 3 pieces of advice And you can, whatever those pieces are, how to keep a family business, culture,
Yeah.
whatever you want. What are your 3 pieces of advice you would give to another family business?
Yeah. Well, so one, I guess, is just what I learned from my dad, and one of his quotes he always would say is always take the high road. And so I would say that's one of my pieces of advice, because I'm sure we've all been there where, sometimes taking the low road, you feel like, you got an email that was maybe not that nice, and how easy is it to want to fire off a nasty response to that, right?
Yeah.
And my dad would say, Dottie, write the email and then delete it and never send it. And so I remembered that. So always take the high road, because taking the low road, it's like I said, it's easier to do, but taking the high road takes more effort to be classy and professional. And so that's one of my pieces of advice that I always like to follow. One of my others would just be curious listening. Making sure, I call it humble inquiry, that to where I was just talking about, making sure that you get to know your people, know their name, know something about them, and just hear what's important to them, get to see them as a real human. I think that, especially as a leader, knowing your people, because we're nothing without our employees. If I don't have them, and they could go elsewhere and find a job in insurance, no problem. There's plenty out there. But why did they choose to stay here? And so I would say humble inquiry from a leadership perspective is super important. And then I would say recognition too, and that's something else that I put a tremendous amount of focus on, is that in order to have a strong workplace culture and have the employee engagement numbers that we're even able to have, a lot of that comes because we built a culture of recognition. And that means that we are constantly, at every level, not just from senior leaders down, but at every level, we are recognizing one another for truly doing impactful work. And it's not just a thank you, right? That would just be a simple thank you. It's more of being direct, specific, and describing the impact. What specifically did that person do, and why? What was the impact? So we call that an ongoing regard. So we've been able to really transform our culture because we've all embraced that culture of recognition. So I would say that's another big piece of advice that I would have to family businesses, or any business really, is make sure you're constantly recognizing your people and be genuine about that. And they will move mountains for you. They will give it their all, and you'll see that play out in your in your business. And be able to grow for hopefully generations
for generations.
Come, right?
Well, amazing that you're 4 generations deep. That's impressive. Anyway, thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you, Tammy. I'm honored and really excited to be here. Thank you.
Thank you.
If you like this episode, subscribe to the Business of Family podcast on your favorite listening platform. You can also find Blue Roots on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. On the next show, I'll be back with another amazing guest who will inspire you with their family business insights. Until then, take care and keep it in the family. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered legal, tax, investment, or insurance advice. Before acting on any advice, please contact your personal or company advisors.